All right, everybody, I know we are standing between you and cocktail hour, but I promise this is worth it. I'm here with Garth Knutson, the CMO of Aflac, to talk about the brand's investment in sports and women's sports. Garth, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks, Molly. Happy to be here.
We're going to yap, but we promise it'll be relevant. So we are going to talk about women's sports and Aflac and the investment, but I want to start with some news that came out yesterday. Deion Sanders, who's a very active partner of Aflac, is away from Colorado football right now for health reasons. What do you make of this?
So I can tell you two things, both are facts. So one is that I've gotten to know Deion and the whole Sanders family pretty well the last 5 years, and the man is a winner. He's the most resilient human that I've probably ever met when it comes to just pure physicality and being able to fight through pain and adversity. So that's fact number one. Fact number two, I spoke with his agent last night, and I know that we're going to be shooting our next commercials with him and Coach Saban here in a couple of weeks, so super excited about that. And for those of you who have heard me talk before, I talk a lot about consistency in branding and marketing and advertising and the value of that. And it's the 25th year of the Aflac Duck. We've been working with Coach Saban for 7 years now, and Coach Prime for 5 years now. And life happens. I was talking with somebody at the bar last night. If I was a CMO of, say, Party City, I wouldn't do a one-off deal with this person, 1 year, and this person 1 year, and this person 1 year, because this brand is about celebrating moments that real people have in their lives, right? So I'd work with the same people, because then when particular talents their kids having a sweet 16 or a high school graduation, or this person's having a 50th birthday party, how great of to use a cheesy buzzword in marketing, like authentic moment, right, for Party City to come in and do that. But Aflac is not Party City. Our purpose is to be there when our policyholders are in their time of need. And so we're there when maybe things aren't so great, right? So I would say that this partnership with Deion Sanders, Coach Prime, has become so much more meaningful for us and for him, because he's learned more about what we do for people who maybe can't afford the type of care that he can, and how valuable our products are. And I've got a quick little video to play that I think sums that up, because this is something that he wouldn't have said a year into the partnership, but 3-4 years into, this is the type of thing that actually happens quite a bit.
All right, let's bring that on up.
This is a non-football related question. I recently had a medical condition, about 2 months ago, and thank God I had Aflac. All right. And, no, I'm serious.
That's a good one.
You're an ambassador for them, a spokesman for them. How important is it for everyone to have Aflac as part of their life?
Well, it sounds like
it's amazing, right?
It may sound like I'm doing a commercial where it covers
You believe in
the
it.
gaps that we can't cover. I mean, Aflac is phenomenal, but not only are they phenomenal to people like you and I. And thank God when I was going through my trials and tribulations, I didn't have those medical expenses that I couldn't afford. But there's a multitude of people that does, and thank God that they stand in the gap and provide for people like yourself. And I'm thankful to be partnered with them for a multitude of years, and I can't wait till you see the new commercial with me and the best coach that ever coached college football, and Coach Saban.
So to me, I would just say that this is the Brand Innovation Summit. So the learning there is, you never know when your product is going to come in and sort of save the day or be relevant in somebody's lives. So having these consistent talent relationships, or relationships with media partners, right? You have so many more opportunities to make them be meaningful if you're around for one. Looks like we've got a little friend over here. He'll hang out there for a bit while we talk.
Spoiler alert, nobody look in the corner. Garth, I want to talk about how we met. Not because the session is about us, but because I think it really sets the stage for Aflac's brand journey and for what we want to talk about. So I think we first talked, what was it, fall 22?
I wrote it down. I have my cheat sheet. You and I met February 27th, 2023.
That was when we met in person. Or was that our first call?
When we talked on the phone.
Yeah, when we talked on the phone, that was beforehand.
Yeah, no.
So in my prior role, Garth and I had a conversation. I was writing a story about the brand's partnership with Staley. That conversation turned into like a 45-minute FaceTime with appearances from the Dog Scout.
That was before.
Yeah,
yes.
I know it was before. But the story was supposed to be about a partnership with Staley. It evolved into so much more. Garth, what did that story end up being about?
Yeah, so we were going into our third and final year as a NCAA March Madness sponsor, and we had decided to go a new creative direction and bring on Coach K, Mike Krzyzewski, and Don Staley. Two goats, in their own right in their professions. And we were going to do run the same play we had been running for the previous 2 years of, a little bit of advertising on the women's side and mostly on the men's side. And we were going to show up at the men's March Madness tournament, and I believe it was Houston that year. The women were in Dallas. And then November 25th, something happened. There was one of these early season tournaments in Las Vegas, Nevada, at a big hotel, and they had built this makeshift basketball court in a ballroom. Probably not that unlike this. Imagine a hoop over here and a hoop over here, and lovely hotel conference room chairs, just like as the seating for the fans. And that's not the bad. That's not bad in itself. But there was a player from Auburn. She was hurt. Hurt pretty badly. And it took nearly an hour for the EMTs to show up. And this is Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm sure there are EMTs literally everywhere. And it takes an hour to show up. And so people on my team started passing this around, and this is so messed up, and I wish that we could do something about this. And then November 29th, I sent this email out, which I think you got a chance to read.
I have seen the email. I can confirm this is true.
Yeah, so I sent this email. The subject line was Parquet pivot, and it said something like, when something happens in the world and you say, I wish somebody would do something about that. I said, read this, and I hyperlinked to this story about this event that had happened of the woman who it took, 45 minutes for the EMTs to come to. And I said, well, this is messed up, and I wish somebody would do something about this, but maybe in this case, not only can we do something about it because we're a national advertiser in sports, and advertising supports the operations of sports, right? More money in the sport from advertisers probably means more EMTs on site, right? And I said, effective immediately, we are going to shift every penny of on-site activation we can from, this is pretty late, this is November, and March is right around the corner. We had all the booths built out and everything to go to the men's. And we're going to shift it all from men's, as much as we can at least, from the men's to the women's. Let's meet on Friday and figure it out. So that was like, I don't know, Monday or Tuesday. And everybody's freaking out a little bit because there was so much planning going into this. And all you marketers out there know how long you plan for something like a March Madness. And we had literally, months with a big holiday in between. And so we show up to this meeting on Friday, and everybody's kind of like, what are we going to do? And I'm the leader. People are looking at me like, what are we going to do? And I'm kind of like, oh, crap. What did we get ourselves into? We thought, you know what? We have a partner in Don Staley who cares so much about the women's game and has poured so much of her time, money, and effort into the women's game very selflessly. And so it was December 18th. I got that written down in my notes here. Me and a team of folks from the Aflac marketing team flew up to Columbia, South Carolina, and sat in Don's office for 2 hours and had this conversation, said, Don Staley, what would you do? And we walked out of there with essentially a blueprint, something we called Don's List, which had 3 different pillars that we were going to go execute against. And I guess for me, then my learning for any marketer in here who's trying to get into something new and support a fan base, support players, support anything. If you have questions, like there are so many people out there who are willing to help you. I saw Amy from the PWHL up here earlier, and I cannot speak for her, but I'm going to guess that this would be a true story. If you were going to try to get into supporting women's hockey, and you called up Amy from the PWHL and you said, oh, we got some ideas, we're not sure if they're right, we're not sure how to activate, can you help us? Could you get us a focus group of 5 female veteran hockey players who can look through some of these ideas we got and maybe contribute some of their own? I can almost guarantee that she would say, absolutely, we are here to help. So don't be scared if you're getting into something new. Ask for help because there's so many people out there willing to help.
I mean, it's an incredible story, and I can't speak for Amy either, but I know there's so many startup leagues out there that do want to help, especially around women's sports. But what was incredible to me is that you did. There was no on-site activation in Houston that year. It was in Dallas. It was in Town. Yeah. It was incredible. And you and I, so Garth, what he left out of the story is he DM'd me on Twitter. The man has my phone number. He's got my email, but no, it was a Twitter message.
You respond a lot quicker on Twitter, I've noticed.
That's fair. A couple weeks before the game, are you set for tickets? I had a media pass, but would you like to join me in my suite? Yes, Garth, I would love to be in the suite in 2023 when it's Caitlin Clark versus Angela Reese in the Final Four. I would love that. But I think the interest of, and we talked about Coach Prime a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
Garth likes to surprise me.
Well, but that morning, so I get a call from Deion's agent, and his main house is about, I don't know, 50 miles north of Texas. His agent calls me. I remember I was like in my hotel bed. It's like, 10 a.m., probably had a long night the night before. And he says, hey, Deion wants to go to the game. I'm like, I invited him to the game like literally weeks before, because his daughter was playing collegiate basketball at the time. But now you want tickets, of course, because this particular game, it was Final Four, Caitlin Clark versus South Carolina. So anyways, yeah, it was, we were sitting down by the court, and I surprised you with, but I think this is relevant to women's sports because this was literally like as the Caitlin Clark effect probably didn't even have a name yet, but was just starting. And Deion Sanders, one of the most amazing athletes in the last 100 years, if not 1,000 years, wanted to be a part of this and see this like he saw it too, which was I think just a really cool thing to witness.
I was a little stunned because I'm in the suite, I'm having a good time, and Garth says halfway through the first game, hey, we're gonna go down, we're gonna be in the 5th row, and we're sitting with Coach Prime. I said, what? Okay, pretty cool experience. But you started talking about this a little bit earlier, so and you and I talk about this a lot, but I was talking with Andrea Brimmer from Ally, who a lot of people in this room are probably familiar with, the other week, and she was saying that she's very frustrated because she hears from a lot of brands that they want to be in women's sports and that they're going to be in women's sports, but it's the same few faces.
Yep.
What advice would you have for brands that want to get into women's sports and aren't necessarily sure where to start?
Yeah, so I can totally see where her frustration is coming from. I think what I would say is what people who want to support women's sports need to do is find the frustrated marketers and advertisers out there who are trying to break through in sports that are maybe a little bigger than they're able to activate in, right? Like I've said on stage before, if I had NFL dollars, like I would love nothing more than to be a big giant NFL sponsor and sponsor a bunch of the teams and be in the Super Bowl, but that costs a lot of money not only to have enough media weight to break through, but then to have a team. And our sponsorship team is literally, it's Kendra, Darby, and Michelle. It's 3 people, right? Like we just couldn't execute that. So if we tried to go into that sport, we would be a small fish or a medium fish at best in this big pond, right? But the same thing happened with March Madness. On men's March Madness, when you've got 3 really big iconic brands, AT&T, Capital One, and Coca-Cola doing great work and spending so much, we were spending what we thought was a lot of money, but it's almost like we weren't there, right? So then shifting over to the women's side, which, as I mentioned, was like half a very emotional decision to do, but also rational, because more than 80% of household healthcare decisions are made by females, right? But then also it allowed us to go in and do something meaningful where there weren't a lot of other brands doing that, and then all of a sudden be a whether you call it we were a medium fish in a small pond or a big fish in a medium pond, doesn't matter. But I think that when you find your appropriate sized pond to play in, then not only do you have the dollars to execute on a media standpoint well, but also you can surround it with the social and the activations. You really have to do all of those things at the highest level to, I believe, show up effectively in any sort of sport. And what I'd say is, we were talking about this a little bit last night, with the proliferation of women's sports and really just live sports in general, like pickleball and all these other things are just like popping up. If, I don't know, a decade ago you had, and I'm making these numbers up, 10, 20, sports, consumer passion points to choose from. Now there are 2 or 3 times that, right? So there are like more adequate sized ponds, to keep that analogy going, that you can look for, right? Just like find the right pond that that you can activate in. So yeah, going back to Andrea's thing, I think that, she's frustrated, more marketers aren't in it, but I think there's a lot of frustrated marketers who could find, some really great, effective, efficient ways to use women's sports to reach their target audience.
Well, and what's really interesting to me about that is the idea that you can spend so much less in women's sports, which is a whole other conversation that we'll have at another time, but you're getting your ROI there.
Totally.
But so what's
fans are more engaged. When I think about when we first jumped in, we buy the majority of our media in the upfronts, and ESPN is invested, I think we heard earlier today, very heavily in women's sports. So I mean, the ROI we got in those first 2 years, the over delivery on the guarantees was astronomical. And I'll tell you, like, when I send those types of emails to my CEO, immediately he says, send it to the board, right? Like, those are the types of stories that they're looking for like us to be efficient in marketing. And those are the types of things that, like, he wants our investors to know about, right? Like, Aflac is not just spending a lot. That's the old way that investor relations used to think and analysts on Wall Street used to think. The best marketers are the ones that spend the most. But that's not which is silly, but that's the way that it was, and a lot of people still do look at it that way. But it really should be, and is starting to become more, who's doing it in the most interesting ways and who's doing it most effectively.
So what are some other examples of Aflac spending in the sports space and in the women's sports space?
And this is, so I'm gonna, Terry Carmichael Jackson, who's the head of the Players Union for the women's professional basketball, she can tell this story much better than I can, so we're gonna roll a clip and then I'll add a little bit of context after that.
I don't know if you all really know the Aflac story. Let's talk about the Aflac story. All-Star Weekend, so the league reaches out and says, we need your help getting players to participate in the skills contest, getting them to participate in the three-point contest. We're like, okay, that's great, we'll help. But we gotta spice it up a little bit. And they said, well, what do you mean? I said, okay, well, are we increasing the prize pool? And they said, well, no, we can't do that. And I said, what do you mean? Why can't we do that? And they said, well, this is what we negotiated. And I said, hello, I'm the union. If you want to pay the players more, we won't file a grievance. It's okay. And that prize pool, for those of you who don't know, is $2,500, right? Each. So Michael calls her on a Friday. By Monday, Emily's got a short list. Aflac's at the top of her list. She calls Aflac. And the request was, the ask was, could you, think about partnering with us, making this a real, experience, a real opportunity. We can engage some players, get their excitement. And our ask is $50,000. What do you think? And Aflac said, sure. And I hear the question, well, how much do the guys get paid? How much do they make when they win? And Michael, he knows all the CBAs. Michael says, well, they get $55,000. And so Aflac said, well, then that's the pot. And we're like, wait, what?
I love that.
And they said, yeah, $110,000.
I love
Y'all are supposed to applaud on that.
So one fun thing about that, there was an article in Esquire, very long article, and there was a very short piece that talked about this, and it said something like, and I'm paraphrasing, this was the first time in history that a man cut off a woman in a conference call, and it resulted in women getting paid more. So it's like a very, very negative thing, like about me on the surface, but I think it's pretty meaningful. So I've got that one hanging on the wall at home. But so that opportunity wouldn't have come if we hadn't have had that 2-hour meeting with Dawn Staley in her office 2 hours before to say, hey, how can we support women's sports? Like, what can we do to help you and to help your peers? And we started executing against all of those things. So when the union needed somebody to call, they called us first, right? And it's just we put ourselves in a place to take advantage of opportunities like when that had. So it's just like, again, I said consistency earlier, like there's consistency in how we've been executing, in women's sports. And it's a different thing like every day and every month. And we're sort of picking and choosing what we think will be the best way to tell our story. And what was so great about this one, I mean, we and Jeff from CAA, when he was up here earlier, alluded to this, and CAA, it was a big part of that. We, going back to the Prime thing, we're there for our policyholders in their time of need. How? We give them checks, like when they're hurt, and we pay them checks fast, right? In this situation, somebody needed checks and they needed them fast, right? Because like the other income wasn't enough, or it wasn't, equal to what the men were getting in this case. So it was a great way to show, not exactly, but maybe it was a little more apples to pears of like what it is that we, Aflac do and what we believe in. And it was at a relatively low cost, and we got like 67 bajillion impressions from it, right? And one of the things I like about it the most is now 144 women in the W think that Aflac is this great company. They know what I know, and the fans really loved it too. So we're excited to go back and do it again this year.
All right, couple quick hitters before we bring up a friend on stage and
Yep.
then get out of here. Dream property for Aflac to partner with.
Dream property, you know, I mean, I think for me, and this just goes back to the consistency thing again too, and it's like, pick something that you know that you can do well and then like keep building up and just adding things on. You know, like we were sponsored SEC Nation for those football fans in the room, and then we added, you know, we went to game day after that, right? Because game day was sort of the next bigger step up, and I was having lunch today with a colleague at the WNBA, and like I would love to be working with the WNBA in a couple of years, you know, if we can, you know, find the money and make it work and just continue to do all the other things that we're doing, but just layer on working with the official property.
An athlete we need to go see play.
Yes. Oh, an athlete we need to go see play.
Who's an athlete we need to go see play?
Shoot. I don't know. I really love watching, you know who I want to go see, because I saw him play in his first game. I've seen him play many games. I want to see Travis Hunter play in Jacksonville this year, because like he is the greatest kid you'll meet, and an amazing athlete.
The women's sports business storyline you're most following in 2025.
Probably PWHL, because I'm excited because they're coming to Seattle. And when they went on their tour, my wife and I got a chance to go, and it was just an amazing experience. And hockey is just such a great thing to see live. And Seattle, where I live, is such a great women's sports town. You know, like big supporters of the Storm and the Reign for so long. I think that we're really going to embrace that team. And Hillary Knight's there, so I think it's going to be fun.
All right. Well, Garth, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah.
And thank you guys. And I'm going to bring up, I'm already ahead of it, my colleague Eileen.
Thanks so much, everybody. That is a wrap on day one of Brand Innovation Summit, but please stay in your seats because we have an incredibly important guest, very good friend of yours, Garth, if I can understand that correctly, longtime friend. Is he coming?
So I think that I like that.
Oh, yes. Can we get Garth's mic on, please?
Yeah, so we brought the Aflac duck with us, and I think I mentioned earlier, this is the 25th anniversary of the Aflac duck, and he does like to flap his wings. If you've seen him on a game day, he can be a little bit of a flight risk, but he's an American Pekin duck, and he will be out in the lobby, so if you want to get pictures with him later, it'd be great. But so I'd like to think of this guy as the GOAT when it comes to animal spokespeople in the advertising world. You know, every brand needs an amplifier, right? And when the Aflac duck launched, little known, we had 7% brand awareness. 3 years later, it was 91%. We had the same brand awareness as Adidas in the US 3 years after this guy launched. But this is the biggest thing. Sales literally doubled. So, you know, he's the GOAT. In our case, the GOAT is the amplifier. We couldn't be more excited to have this guy, and yeah, he comes with us everywhere. Lots of times people ask, is the Aflac duck real? Yes, the Aflac duck is real. He lives on a farm. The family who raises him is here today. They drive him around in an air-conditioned SUV and take him to places with us, and he always gets a nice room with the biggest bathtub we can get, and his girlfriend is here, and they'll swim around in the bathtub, and yeah. But he probably spends, I don't know, about 12 weeks on the road or so? Yeah.
What kind of luggage does he have?
Yeah, he's a happy little guy. So yeah, like we said, he will be out here, so if you want to get your picture taken, please do come. But thank you, everybody. Appreciate your time.
Thanks so much, everybody. Our reception is right out there, sponsored by all of our great exhibitors. And I wanted to say tomorrow, yes, the Brand Innovation Menagerie does continue. We are going to have puppies in the morning at breakfast. At 8:15, we're going to have a special coffee experience brought to you by a local brand, Stella Blue, which is the name of Dan Katz's, Big Cat Katz's rescue dog that he named the brand after. So in honor of that wonderful brand, we're going to have 3 puppies who are coming to join us for breakfast tomorrow morning from a local animal shelter. And anything you purchase, all those donations will indeed go to local animal rescue organizations. So enjoy your evening. We'll see you back here at 8:15 tomorrow.